Please wait for 2 or 3 minutes, then we can start. Okay, so today we will cover top 10 .NET interview question. So this is the most important top 10 interview question. Our first question will be, what is the anti-framework core? So it is a very important question and multiple interview. This question will be asked by interviewer. So anti-framework is a object relation mapper that allows developers to interact with a database using .NET object instead of writing raw SQL queries. So you can see in every project we are using here anti-framework core. So using this anti-framework core, we need to install one package, that is the Microsoft.anti-framework core. After that we can inherit the main class of anti-framework core, that is a DB context. If you can see here, this is my application DB context. Here we can inherit the basic anti-framework class, like main class, that is a DB context. So this is, it will do all the things, like this table will be created in the database. When we can run in the add migration, it will track all the changes. So before using anti-framework core, our code will be, we need to write here row SQL query, but with the help of anti-framework core, we can communicate with the help of C# objects. So in an anti-framework core, we have a two types of, we have a two types. So firstly, what is the anti-framework core? You can read definition from anywhere. I can just write here simple definition. So AF core is the bridge between your application and database. And we have a two types of anti-framework core. First one is, like we have a two types. First one is code first approach, and second one is database first approach. So in the code first approach, we can firstly create the models or the classes. After that we can run the migration, and then we can create that table in the database. So like that way we can follow code first approach. And second one is database first approach. So how we can do a database first approach? In the database first approach, firstly we can create the database. For example, you can create a user model. So firstly you can create this table in the database, and then this table will be created after that here in the Business Studio. So model first approach, or you can say code first approach, we follow when we are developing any application from the scratch. Good morning, because And if anyone have any doubt, you can write here. So I also try to cover that question. So first one is code first approach that we already follow here. You can see here. Here I can follow code first approach, and I can add my, you can see here, for example, I want to add a new table here. So I just added here, for example, firstly I will show you how we can implement a code first ap- code first approach. So firstly I can take here table product. So this is my table, and how this table I want to create in the database. Firstly I can create it here because we are following here code first approach. Okay, so here I can set it public int id, string name, description, and we can take these three fields. So I want to create this table in the database. For example, here we are using this database. We are using onion architecture. So I can, so these are the most important question. Like not only read the simple definition, you have to knowledge how we can implement these things practically. So then you are able to answer in an interview. When you are just read the definition, when anyone asks you cross questions, so that time you are not able to answer these questions. So try to cover all these top 10 question practically. So our database name will be here dv hyphen onion architecture. So this one. So you can see here. Now we have only, okay, here we already have one table onion architecture. So why it's not added? Okay, so we can create another table here. Mm, student, or we can create a, for example, new database. We are not using this. Here we can create a new database also. Testing demo, and we have created these two tables. So firstly, we are using here anti-framework code, so we don't need to write a row SQL query. We can communicate with the help of C# objects. So firstly, we can created this model, and we are following this approach, code first approach. So firstly, we have created model. Then this table will be created here in the database. So how we can do here? So our next step is we need to add here in the application DB context. Here we can inherit the anti-framework core main class. You can see if I remove this, it will giving the error. So this is the main class, and this is all provided by this package that we already installed, and this version we are using here. So I can add the namespace first, and this is the main class, and dv set inside this we can add our model and give the name that like table name I want to give here in the database. So this is my new database. So I already added one migration. Firstly, we need to, or I can also remove this migration folder and make from the scratch. So go to tools, Nugget package manager. So here we can run the command So this is our, because we are following here onion architecture. So this is my class library where I can add the things that are related to a database. So I can choose this one, and here I can run the command add migration, add user, and add student table. So you can see here migration will be created. Okay. Okay, so here we only added this one. We are not added here student. That's why our migration here only migration created for the user table. So this table will be created in the database. Firstly, update database. So this is the code first approach. So now you can see this table will be created in the database. Let's test. This is my database. So we are created this. This is our tables. So there is a two important question. First one is this table. Demo testing. Okay, yeah, these fields we can take. So same fields will be created here. And second question will be how your migration will be saved here. So you can see here in this table dvo.af migration history, your migration will be saved. So same migration you can see we are added here. So like that way, anti-framework track all the changes. Firstly, it get these changes from here and it automatically convert because this is understand the row SQL query. So these all things will be handled by anti-framework call. So when it goes to a mm, anti-framework call, like when it goes to a database, it automatically create the SQL query. These things all handled by anti-framework call. We don't need to write. We only communicate with the help of C# objects. Second will be a you can see how a first table will be created, second table of a user. So again we need to add here in the application DB set. Then this table will be created here. Public DB set. Next one is students. So this table also created, and again we need to run the command. Firstly, add migration, add student table, then we can run the command update database. So this migration will be created here, and this table also created in the database, and in the database name will be a students. So firstly we can check here AF history. So you can see here data migration will be added, that we can add there, and also your table will be created here. So you can see here this student table is created here. So this is the example of code first approach. So in the code first approach, firstly we can create the model and then add it to our application DB context. Inside the DB set, and then this table will be created. So is it clear to everyone, code first approach, or anyone have any doubt, you can message here. So we can start the next code database first approach. Okay, so this is the code first approach. Next one is a database first approach. So in the database first approach, we can follow that time when we already have a database. And for example, you have any legacy project and you want to upgrade this, but you want to use same database. So that time we can follow a database first approach. So how we can do a database first approach? So firstly, we can create the database. For example, you can see this database already created. Um, hmm. So you can see this database already created and already created this one. So how we can do here? How to implement a database first approach? You can firstly I can remove all the things from here, close all the tabs. So our table will be created here, and I want to create in a system here. So firstly, what I can do? mm, I can take any simple project. So in this project, we can follow database first approach. So firstly, what I can do, I can delete this model folder from here, and solve the tabs. And I will also delete from here this DB context file. So this is the main file that will do all the work. So I can remove also this. This is only we can do when we are following database first approach. And here I can give the database name this one. So here we already have, that we can create it now. This one, I can choose this database. So in this database, we already have a two tables. First one is our student and second one is a user. So I can add here, and next you can see here here you can get the error. I can also comment this because there is no application DB context, no model, so nothing will be here. So here, to implement a database first approach, you need to run this command. Okay, this one. So I can copy this scaffold DB context, and here we can give the which database we want to use. So here we can use this database. So I can just copy this and add here. Next one is all the things will be correct, which database we are using, and output it means where you can save these. So I want to these all the table I want to save inside the models folder. So scaffold, this is the basic query, scaffold hyphen db context, and inside this firstly you can add your connection string, and then you can say which database. For example, if you use a PostgreSQL or SQL, so here we are using anti-framework SQL, and after that you can give the folder name. So like that way we can follow the database first approach, and I can copy this and this is my, so here I can add this and click on the enter. Mm, Localhost TV context. Let's check which database. Firstly, I will reveal this any error we are getting here. So here we are getting error, that's why it's not running. So I also comment this code. Okay, see. Okay, also need to remove this because migration we only created when we are following code first approach. So now we are following database first approach, so we don't need this migration also. So now check. So you can see here now we don't have any error. So I can run same command. So you can see here it will created the this model folder automatically, and you can see it automatically create this student table. So these same table we are created here in our Anina lecture. So you can see here this model first will be student. We have a three fields, and same three fields will be created here in the student table, you can see here. And the next one is we have a user table. So in the user table we have a six fields, so same six field it will be created here. So this is the database first approach, and like that way we can follow the database first approach. Firstly, we can create that table in the database. For example, if I want to change anything, I want to add anything here, so here like firstly I can update here, then I can add here. So if you want to update anything, that time you can run this command. You can simply write output here. Here you can give your table name hyphen table, for example user and force. For example, in a user table you can update it any new field. So like that way this table will be updated here, student table. So like that way we can implement the database first approach. So is it clear to everyone, code first approach and database first approach, or anyone have any confusion here? Or anyone have any question related to this? Okay. So this is the two basic approach, and this is the most important question because this is the basic. If you are not understand this topic, it means you are not working in a .NET Core. So this is the basic concept, and it's very important in a .NET interview. So it's not only you can just read the definition, you also have to knowledge related to these both things. So this is our first question. Anti-framework core is the bridge between our application and database. Here it will automatically convert the C# objects to a row SQL query, and we can communicate with the help of C# objects instead of using a mm, row SQL query. And here we have two approaches, code first approach and database approach. In the code first approach, firstly we can create the model, then we can add migration update database and add inside the application DB context, and then create in the database. In database approach, firstly we can create the database, then it will create the model. So you can see here it automatically also created the DB context file. You can see here automatically it will inherit the DB context and all the things it can do, and all the configuration based on your understanding it will create here automatically. So this is the database first approach. So this is our first question. Second question, our will be a solid principle. So why we use a solid principle? Solid principle is a design pattern to write our code clean, and we can easily extend our code maintainable. So a to implement a, you can say, clean architecture, so we can make some rules. So when we can create any application, so we can try to follow, because in every latest project we can follow solid principle. So it's a first principle will be a, so this is first anti framework code that we already covered. Second one is a what is a solid principle? So in the solid principle, we have a five design pattern. First one is a single responsibility principle. So it means, so this is our first question that we already covered. Second one is this one, solid principle. First one is a, so first I will give you a simple definition. You can read from anywhere. Solid principles are the design pattern to write our code clean, maintainable, and easily extendable, extendable and easy to test. So this is a simple definition. You can read anywhere. There are multiple definition in Google, ChatGPT. You can use anywhere, but you have to like practical understanding how we can implement a solid principle. Because if you are a fresher or experienced, no one expecting you just give the definition, because you can easily understand the definition, but they will expecting you how you can implement these things in your project or in your any project. So they will ask you related to a practically implementation, not just a definition. So you can read any definition and side by side also understand the implementation. So if anyone asks you any cross question related to this, so you can easily understand. So first one is a single responsibility principle. Single responsibility principle means a class should have only the single responsibility and single reason to change. Only the single responsibility and single reason to change. So this is our first principle. For example, you can do here, you can see here, this class follow a single responsibility principle. Means a class should have only the single responsibility or single reason to change. So you can see here in the student table, we are related things that are related to a student, and in a user table, we are added things that are related to a user. So here we can follow a single responsibility principle. Second principle will be a open close principle. Open close principle means a class should open for extension but close for modification. For example, you can see here interface. This interface is open for extension. You can easily extend if you want any new method, add, update, update by ID, any new method you want. So we you can easily add here. Here we can follow open close principle. Open close, you can see here, if I it means any class or interface open for extension but close for modification. It means we are not changing the previous method. If we want new thing, or then we can update here. So we are not, for example, I also want a get by ID and get by name. So one thing is you can change here and you can add here string name. So that also work. But that time, if you are changes here, it will also impact your implementation here. Here you can get the error, because here you can insert this interface. After that, same error you are getting here. So you can see this is the simple demo project, but when you are working in actual project, so these class have a multiple reference, so you need to change multiple time or multiple reference. For example, if this now this class have only the three reference. For example, if this file have a 10,000 reference, so you need to change in the 10,000 reference. So that's why we can follow here open close principle. Next one is the list scope subdivision principle. In the list scope subdivision principle means, for example, if you are make here any base class, base.cs class, and sorry, this one. Okay, so you can create here in the base class, you can add id because every table we can add the id, and here you can add a date time, created date, like uh, created date of any field, or updated date, user id, or any information, common information. So you can see here we are make here this common table, base table. So in the base table we are only added the things that actually want in other table. For example, if I inherited here base table, so that time we don't need to add here id. I can inherit here base. We don't need to id because we already added in the base class. So this is the list of subdivision principle. In this class, we are not a we don't need to like not add the things that we are not here in the student table. For example, I can add it here public public int store id. Store id. So this is the base table and we are using multiple table. So if I added here, for example, in the student table I want a store id, but in the user table I don't want a store id, and I also inherited the method here base class, but I don't want this field. So that time we are not following here list of substitution principle. So it in this class forcefully use this field store id that it not actually want. So that's why here we are not following the list of substitution principle. So here we are adding only things that we actually want. So this is the list of subdivision principle. Next one is the interface segregation principle. Interface segregation principle means rather than making a big interface, we are divided into four parts. For example, we have a one choice, like you can create it or one interface and also add the things related to auth service and product service in one common. So that time we are not following interface segregation principle. So we can make a separate interface here for the auth service and iProduct service. So this is the interface aggregation principle means rather than creating a big interface, we can divide into parts so that we can directly inherited here, not inherited any, for example, any method I can add here. Any, for example, get by ID, get by name. For example, I just added this field name and string name, and this method I don't want in a product service, I just created. For example, you can see here you can get the error. So you need to forcefully inserted this method that you not actually want. So this is we are not, this is the we are reaching this principal interface segregation. For example, this if you want this interface in another class or another implementation, so you can make a new one, like I product name. For it's just for understanding. So if you, you can use want to use this method in another interface, another implementation, so you can make separate here rather than adding here, because if you are adding here, this interface, this service have a forcefully need to implement this, so that time we are not following interface segregation principle. So interface segregation principle means we are adding only the method that we actually want. If we want a new, so we can divide it into parts, and there it's will be used, then where we can use that interface. And the last one is, and the most important is, dependency injection. So last one is a dependency injection or dependency inversion. This is the most important thing. And in the, you can see here, we can implement here. Here we are not implemented dependency injection. We are directly write all the code and directly inject our application DB context here. And here we can follow a dependency injection. We can implement dependency injection with the help of interface, and we can inject our interface inside our constructor here. Rather than writing in dependency injection means rather than writing all the code here, we can call from the outside. So you can see here, here we can call the method interface. So this is the method, and here we can do only the definition, and implementation we already hide. Implementation we can do here in the controller. We can call the this I user interface, and we just call the method, and we can pass the parameter that it want. For example, in the get all method, this is the get all method. We don't need to pass any parameters, so simply we can write. Second one is, for example, if I write here get by id, so we just call the method and we can pass a parameter. I can show you here, you can see. Yeah, here we also follow. So you can see here, here we can call the method get by, get all products, get by id, create product, and update product. So this is, if you can go its definition, so definition will be here. And if you go here implementation, so there in inside the service, so we are here, we also follow the oops concept, encapsulation, abstraction also. And in dependency injection, we have a three types: add, scoped, add singleton, and add transist. First one is in the to adding the interface and service, we are using add scoped. And add, it means it will create an instance per http request. Next one is a transist is used, for example, if you want to sending the email, so that time we are use add transist. It will create an instance per like every request. And the singleton, it will create the instance for one time for the entire application. For example, if you are implement a logging, you want to save the logs, so that time you can follow a add singleton. So these are the three types of a dependency injection. And our next question will be a JWT authentication. So you can show you here in this project. So first one is we can adding all the configuration in a app setting.json file, and in our token will be divided into three parts: payload, header, payload, and signature. In the payload, we can save the user information, and in the header, we are saving the information which we are algorithm we are using, and in the signature we can make it unique and add all the things, like that way it will create it. And these all configuration we can write in the app setting .json file. And next question is, I already clear, we have a three parts: header, payload, and signature. I can show you here. So you can see here our JWT structure: header, where we can save the user information, and this is the payload, and here we can add our secret key to make it unique. So this is the structure of JWT token, JSON web token. Sorry. Next one is how we can implement a role-based authentication. So you can see here, here we can implement a role-based authentication. So if user have a role, admin, then he will able to use this API or this method update method. So here we can implement with the help of this keyword authorized roles and admin. So firstly user will log in here and add your password, and then it will generate a token. In the token we can save all the user information like what username role. So with the help of that token we are added logic here. So this logic will understand like here we can added this logic, and here we can identify like token validity issuer audience these things. So if this is the validate to user and have a same role, so then we are able to assess these classes. So you can see here we can save the information. First one is a key. So this key will be a 256 bytes, means which algorithm we are using. Issuer means who will generate this token. Audience means who will consume the token. And for example, how much times after you can expire your token. For example, if you add here 60 minutes, so it's a choice. So this is the JW token. Next one is monolithic and monorepo or this architecture. So you can see here we are following monolithic. All the things will be in a same project. And second one is the monorepo architecture. So this is the monorepo architecture. We can make a multiple, we can make a one main folder, and inside this we can make a multiple project here, customer store, and everyone have, it will be work independently, every have a different database. And for example you can also use a different architecture. So it's your choice. For example here we can follow onion architecture here also. So it's a choice. For example here you are using PostgreSQL, and here you can use the SQL Server. So it's a choice. So like that way, this is the mono repo, or you can also say microservices architecture. And next one is a middleware, and can we create a custom middleware? So yes, we can create a middleware. Middleware is used to handle the HTTP request pipeline. So middleware, you can see here we already created middleware here. So we are added here middleware in our program.cs file. So you can see here we can make a exception middleware. If I have any exception middleware, so it will check here and throw the error here directly hitting our method before hitting my this method. So here we are adding this exception heading middleware. So this is our next question, and our next question will be a dependency injection that we already cover. Automapper. Automapper means it's used for the security purpose to protect our domain model. If you don't want to directly show our domain model, we can communicate with the help of DTO. So DTO means, for example, in your table have a multiple fields and you want only two. So these things will be happen by with the help of DTO. So DTO we are used for the security rather than directly show our domain model. We can communicate with the help of DTO. So this question already covered. Next one is only this left. Oops. So we have four types of oops concept. First one is the abstraction. So here you can see here. So you can see here we can achieve the abstraction. We are hiding all the details inside the order data where we can the implementation, and we can implement abstraction with the help of interface here. So this is the example of abstraction. Encapsulation means we are wrapping all the data. So if you can see here implementation, so here we can implement the encapsulation. So means we are wrapping data and method together in a single unit. All the code will be here, and in the controller we can hide this implementation here. And we are just call the method that we can write in our interface. So in the service, you in the interview you can easily say in the service we can implement the encapsulation. And inheritance we already use. And last one is a polymorphism. There are two types: method overloading and method overriding. So these are the top 10 most important interview questions. So if you have any .NET interview, so you can try to cover these top 10 .NET interview question. Okay, so this is done for today class. I hope this video will be helpful for you. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.